Hi, I'm Ray Kerlick from the law firm of Wadler, Perches, Hundl, and Kerlick, and I'm here in our Fulshear office answering questions that people have about land ownership.
I've inherited land. What do I do?
Well, it depends. The first thing that we're usually trying to do is clear title to that land. So there are easy ways to do it and more difficult ways to do it that require a lot more effort on our part. The easy way is if the land is owned by someone who has a will. So the first question we'll want to know, is there a will or is there not a will? If there is a will, the will typically specifies who gets the property and designates an executor to actually distribute that property to the people in question. There are other issues that relate to that, and we'll talk about those in a second. The second and more difficult way to handle that type of distribution is by way of an heirship proceeding. And just as you can imagine, an heirship proceeding is a situation in which a probate court determines who the proper heirs of a deceased person are. It will also make a determination as to what percentage ownership each heir may have. And that's typically based on where they are in terms of the family tree, how many layers down they are, and so on. Once the court makes that determination as to who the owners are, then there will be a decision to make. What can I do? Well, typically that's going to require either an administrator to be put into place or for the parties to work together in terms of common ownership of the land. Fortunately, when it comes to things like taxes and maintenance and insurance, the rules are relatively straightforward. Everyone should contribute, and that includes on taxes and so on. If you have reason to believe that the taxes are being paid only by one person, or you're that person, typically that's why you need to go back and get an heirship judgment so that you can actually have a percentage for which only you will be responsible in terms of taxes and maintenance. Now, what happens if there are situations between the co-owners and they're not getting along, or there's not a consensus on what they want to do with the tract? There's another situation and type of suit that we can prepare. It's called a partition. A partition takes these percentage ownership and it turns it into acreage. The court then can decide who owns what acreage, or can actually order the property to be sold based on the percentage interest and acreage determinations, or it can actually order the property be divided into acreage based on this percentage heirship interest. It's an expensive and complicated process. It definitely requires a lawyer, but fortunately in most situations we're able to reach a negotiation among the differing heirs prior to actually going through with a full trial and judicial determination of that partition. Other issues that often come up have to do with second spouses. So if I am the child of the person who's deceased's first marriage and my mother or father remarries, what happens with regard to property that my mother or father owns if they've been remarried? And again, typically that's going to require an attorney's involvement to help you determine what rights that second spouse may have. In most situations, that second spouse is going to have what's called a homestead interest. So if your mother or father's second spouse is living in a piece of property, as a general rule, you're not going to be able to kick that person out so long as they're continuing to make that place their permanent residence. You may own the property, but they may continue to live there for the rest of their life or until certain other situations happen. So this is again another situation where typically we get involved to help determine what is the nature of the homestead, what is the extent of the homestead, and what are some remedies as between the two parties in order to reach a resolution that can allow everybody to move forward with their lives. These are all issues that require some legal expertise and the advice of counsel. So please reach out if you have further questions about any of these